everyone. Finally getting back to working on the environment a bit more. And I'm going to start by finishing off a few more of the modules I need, and then I'll be jumping into exporting the textures that Matt made and getting that plugged into Shade. And also adjusting it a bit more for getting the tiling correctly on the floors. I'm going to do that after I get these corner pieces here changed. So I did have one of these pieces duplicated over, but this technically doesn't match up perfectly when at an angle. And these also won't tile quite perfectly at an angle. If I do slide it here, it won't be quite matching up vertice to vertice. It'll be a little bit off even if it looks right. So that's what I'm going to fix first. Make those variations. Do that. Probably going to move the center pivot to the corner too on these. This 2 point. And actually, I'm going to go get the textures first. I want to plug it in inside of Blender to see how it's tiling and all that. Let me go to my textures real quick. This is one of the tile materials that Matt had made just last Friday. A lot of new parameters I had wanted for it. Yeah, I want to do this. Basically, what I want to do is plug this in the Shade into the vertex blend material from Shade, and I'll be showing how to download that too and get it installed. It's very easy, thankfully, with the Epic Store. I want this to be blending like vertex paint between a broken version and a non-broken version. First, I am going to increase tiling of the tiles on this. And add a new output. I'll plug that in a second. I'm basically going to convert that into the MRAO texture that you could download from the site, for example. Nothing special for it. That's everything I want for that. I'm going to rename this one MRAO and do a GBA merge right here. Metalness goes in the red. Roughness goes in the green, and ambient occlusion to blue. That will be the MRAO. Right. I think I have this one as the default clean I want. Yeah, I'm going to use this one as default clean. Actually, before I export, let me change all these to be 8-bit, just to make them a bit smaller. So I don't need them to be 16-bit. And also, Unreal actually gets very finicky when you put 16-bit textures in there. I don't recommend doing it. It kind of gets a bit upset. I don't think it actually officially supports a lot of 8-bit textures, if I remember correctly. I don't think I'll be using the height on these at all, though. I do parallax. I want the MRAO, the base color, height, and normal, so I'm going to export out the height too. This is going to be the unbroken tile version. Export that into a folder called not broken. I'm actually going to duplicate this setup here at the graph. And then it's just a few parameters. I kind of somewhat have them in sync. Right. Actually, I should rename this unbroken. I'm going to add a new graph where I'm going to duplicate it into. And this one will be broken. And grab all this and Control C and Control V. Yeah, for the shader, you should just be able to plug in just a single constant, like from 0 to 1, into the shader output and that way it doesn't have like a texture file loaded in. Though I believe when making like a preset material in Unreal and like you expose a texture file, I think it like will absolutely require you to have a texture plugin even if you don't have a texture for it. At least I remember having that issue before. So there were times when I was using different shaders that required like a texture input, like an exposed parameter. And for that, I would just have like a 16 pixel by 16 pixel blacken texture and just drop that in. Let's change this 240 by 258. Yeah, I'm not even exporting out my metallic texture for these or the roughness texture since I actually have all that inside the MRAO texture. But for this one, I want to adjust the amount of crack tiles. I think I'm going to go back to the other one and increase the amount of cracks too. Make a lot more missing tile. There we are. Not a crazy amount though. Everything else I want to keep the same. I like that. I'm going to export this out into the broken one, so we don't need the roughness and don't need the metallic. I will be exporting out the height, but I don't know if I'll be using that or not. Not in the folder. As long as you don't import it into Unreal, it doesn't put it in as an asset. So now I've got these textures export, I can import just one of them into Blender. That way I can kind of see how the tiling is looking in there. I probably won't be hooking up the entire material in there. I'm going to be exporting it to Unreal anyway. Go back into here. Open up the material we have on those broken tiles. I'm just gonna drag the base color file texture into here. Plug that in. And now I can see things. So I wanted to make sure that the turns here are seamless. I'm always going to be working on the grid. I'd rather say duplicate this and have this here. You can see for those turns in the environment that when you turn a piece diagonally 45 degrees, it doesn't quite make it all the way to a corner piece. It's kind of somewhat halfway. So you could just add on a few more vertices, but remember the UV space is square, so the tiling is always going to be about 2 meters. So what I usually do for this is I'll take this piece here, hit Shift-D, X, and then join these together. You see that when you have it going twice, it almost goes perfectly, not quite all the way there, but pretty close. And that's close enough so I can stretch it just a little bit, but it won't be noticeable in the texture that's being stretched out. It'll be a lot more noticeable. I was doing like a really extreme stretching. Leave these for now so we get to work with. The way I'm going to stretch it out to that is select all the vertices and then make sure this vertex is active. Then change. I was going to scale up on the active element. Scale upon X and get it relatively close. Then I'm gonna grab all these last vertices to make sure it's perfectly on it. I already moved the 3D cursor to one of the corners there. And I'm just going to scale Shift Z 0. Now I know those vertices are directly on the corner. Let's ever so subtly stretch, not too severe. You could try doing world aligned textures for it, but the issue with world aligned textures is it actually does stretching pretty severe at 45-degree angles. This works quite a bit better. And this also means now I can duplicate and then this over, so forth. I want to do it on X like that. Then GY. I can do that inside Unreal Engine 4 and it'll all be seamless going diagonal now. Yes, I do. So for this one, the controls here. Insert the location. No, not right there. Insert my keyframes. So this is technically like a 300 by 300. It's kind of going 400 across there. Let me apply the rotation on it. By 3. Even though it's a little bit further diagonally, but I know it's diagonal. I'm going to export this. I'm going to change the pivots on these real quick. Here's gonna be in the corners. This means this one's going to break when it goes back to UV4. We can fix it very easily. I also want the corners to have a bit of a bevel to them. I'll fix that too. I won't do that. Probably join these two together and then I'll bevel it a bit later. For now, this should be the thing I need to export. Go back to Unreal now and import those new models. I'm going to re-import the 300 by 300 walls since I just changed that. And we're going to slide them all over. That. The pivot has changed. But since these are all prefabs, I can double click the prefab. Let me change UV4 so you can see everything. Yes, let's shrink it down nice and small. Back in the viewport here where it updated that asset, I can just click it and drag it on over the snapping. Save it, file. You can see as it most messed up these parts for some reason. Bit odd. Oh, that's because these aren't from the prefabs, that's why. I'm going to be making some different pieces here for these corners too, so these aren't so sharp, so I've kind of beveled corner pieces and so forth. I'm going to import the materials. This. And this will match up perfectly with that. Change the skylight before so you can actually see. Tone that down later once I actually have lighting in the scene. Right. So one of the things I'm also going to be using is part of the GT Shade shader pack. And I already had gotten that installed in here, so I have a folder here called GT Shade. The way you can get it installed to your project is if you go to the Epic Game Store and then just type Shade. It's a free download on here. You can type Shade and go to it right over here. And then you just click the Add to Project button and choose the project you want it added to. So there's shade examples, which are kind of like the presets that you can drag on and then do some editing on. I'm going to be using the GT Blend instance for the tiles. But you also have access to the source files here, so you can open up the GT Blend, for example, and view everything going on inside the shader. Make any changes if you want to. There's quite a few things going on here. These are all made by Greg or Mato here at GT at the time. So first I'm actually going to go to the Subway, a new folder called Textures. I'm going to drag over my texture files. All right. Those should all be good. Go back to the materials over here. I'm going to grab the m_GT blend instance. I'm going to duplicate it. Move this over here. When I double click on it, it's going to open up. And just for a second so I can move my stuff. Where the window? Here it is. So I'm just going to swap out these textures now with my primary textures. Loved it. So it looks like this is the bottom base material here, so I'm going to use this as the regular stone. Plug in my base color here. My MRAO here. The height goes into here. I think it looks the height for the blending. It probably works fine without the height either. Here. So there's all the unbroken tiles in the top slots. And then on these down here, I'm going to put the broken. And it looks like it has palm on right now, pretty strong. So let me turn the palm down. I also want to change the UV type. Put these down to 1 just in case. Palm controls. I think palm for the top is different. That's what that basically puts that at 0. I'm gonna just have them at 0 for now. I don't think I'm gonna be using. All right. Now I can take this and plug this up. Again, I don't have a material slot on this. I think I need to go to prefab maybe. Or I might have accidentally forgotten to, but no, it has one. Just need to plug it in here. Right, and they're all broken, so let me go to the vertex paint here. All down to 0. There we are. Actually should be able to go back and like fill it inside. Let me see if I can do it inside the prefab. I think I can. Get the paint inside here? Maybe not. I think if I select all of these, I can paint across. There we go. Shift click. Okay, neat. I'm just gonna delete this and duplicate this one to get paint. Now I'm looking to decide how I'm going to want to do the floors here. I think I know. I still need to make the rim sheet base here. I have all the model files where I'm going to be making it. It'll be a bit easier to work with if I ever need to make changes. But now that I have this all plugged in, I can say select all these, paint on it some. Should just be in the red channel I need to paint on. Which I actually probably need to add a few more vertices here. It becomes more easier to control the more vertices you have. Yeah, I deleted a lot of the vertices there, so I'm gonna need to add more vertices if I want to paint better on these. Kind of get it how I want, but not quite. I need to make the blending a little bit harder too. Go back into here. export. Let me check. Looks like these UVs are actually squished a little bit. That's fine. Figure out how I want to do the diagonal points. It's a little bit trickier, but I have an idea for getting everything to line up perfectly and be seamless. Go ahead and duplicate this piece. Alright, what I'm going to do is then, I'll probably want to go ahead and make the other texture for these before I really start messing with those two. But I'm going to go back into Unreal and show you what I'm going to do. Let's get those new textures. Just subway floor. I may swap out the subway floor later in the future. For like gum on it and whatnot. Okay. Create a new folder. Inside the instances. To fix the UVs on this one from the dynamics, I'm going to use world alignment on these. It'll be a bit easier to work with. Do that by dragging in the MRAO, these three textures. Setting up world alignment's pretty easy. Just type world align. A few different ones you want to get. World align texture is what you want to use for the base color. These actually need to be texture objects. Instead, have what you want selected down here, and then right click and type texture object. And it should automatically plug in. If it doesn't, you can always drag it in right over here. But now I'll be happy with that. And we just plug that into the base color here. Delete this one too. Select type, texture object. And this one I'm also going to do a world align texture, but world align texture separate channels. They'll separate out the red, green, and blue channels on this one. So you know that's MRAO, so we know that red is metalness, even though this doesn't have any metalness in it. This will be all black. So metalness and then roughness. Ambient occlusion. And for the normal map, you do world align normal. We'll grab the normal texture down here, click and add another texture object. And this just goes into the normal. So now, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, easier to see. Usually you wouldn't normally want to do this on things that are like tiles, but as you can see on the edges, it can blend. It's basically projecting it from all different angles. This is more useful for the floors here, so when I move them around, they'll always be tiling correctly. So it also doesn't work really perfectly on cylinder objects either. So a little bit, you can increase the harshness of it, but prefer to do more grungy stuff. But it'll work really well for the floors. We need to increase the tiling here. So tiling is determined by a constant 3 vector. And each vector represents the x, y, and z. So if we go in the red, green, and blue, we want the tile to be 2 meters. Each one is a centimeter, so 200 by 200 by 200. And then this just goes into the texture size. And this one needs it for each channel. We can just save. Okay. I'm going to close this now. I'm going to right click and from it for when I add parameters later. The actual instance material and everything. So here's why I did that. Now with this floor here, when I hit Control C and V, you can see it all stays aligned and tiled, even though I moved all the way over. The important thing is when I rotate this now, it's also still stays aligned, which is useful for like how the ref is. That's how I'm gonna make it so that when these turn, it's all aligned. Let me pull up the Pinterest ref again. Where do I have it? Way too big, Google. Around here somewhere. It's in sci-fi board. Very blonde. Alright, down here. But yeah, you can see the tiles on the floor in this example. They don't rotate when the path rotates. They always are aligned in the same direction. Just minimize that. I'm going to delete that. Go back to the models here. Update this one. The other thing is, messed the blue backgrounds of Blender and got these a little bit stretched. That even though these are stretched, when I do world alignment, it'll ignore that and still work fine. So that's not where I want it. So there we are. Still all tiling the way I want the tile. Now we have all installed. I need to change these maps might be registering incorrectly. It's registering as inside the shader. I want these to be non-color or linear. I'm gonna get upset about that. I'll have to continue anyway. Turn off SGB there. Hope I need to fix that. There we go. Now it's actually using the correct roughness. It was way too shiny before. I actually need to fix that in the other ones too. I wasn't reading them correctly. Do it for this one. Not the SRG. And yeah, it's using the correct roughness on these now. Except for these four. Updating for some reason. There we go. That updated. There we go. Updating. Now the roughness on these is actually correct. Those all in. Swap up I have in the shader. I'm just gonna keep on defaulting to. I always forget that UE it defaults to having everything filled with colors, which I don't like. I believe there is. Yes, I can. You can tell to like bucket fill. There we go. A lot easier way to do that. Little bucket button. Having these waterline will also make it easier for these corner pieces here. I want to make a separate piece for the trims here to be going across. I want it to work no matter what orientation it is. I think my mic volume is kind of low, so if I can turn it up a little bit. All right, now I've turned it up some. It was being a bit too quiet. All right, we'll need to do the ceiling soon. We could just use the floor pieces for that too. Right, so I need to get the plaster material in for those. I'm also going to change that a little bit to be rougher too. So let's go ahead and create the plaster material. Well, actually, Matt already made it for me. I just want to plug it into here. I really like this one. I never got to get a good close look at this before. Yes, that'll do very nicely. Actually, I should be able to use this on the pipes too. In the reference, if I didn't close. A lot of the pipes kind of have a plastery material on it. That'll be nice that I think I can use this for all the piping too. I guess they kind of just spray the same stuff all over the ceiling, whatnot. That'll be convenient. Let's go ahead and just a few parameters on here. Was grunge. Right. All right. That's all I really care for it though. Adjust these models a little bit. A little bit of a lip right here. I need to make some longer steps too. I'm not like making the entire environment like picture identical layout, adding an additional hallway piece on it and so forth. It'd be relatively close. Okay, so back to UE, re-import that. Why are you upset? Oh, it's going to import the material. Let's not do that. Yeah, I figured it was gonna. Oh, okay. double click and correct that on it. I'm gonna reset these anyway. Oh, why does it have two material slots on it? Interesting. Materials on here, do I? No. Let's delete you then. Right? Yes, I actually need to go fix that in the other one too. Not be using the flat top, just be the XYZ texture. Like the music stopped. Yes, it did. I need to go into the prefab on that and figure how in the world to reset the vertex colors on it. It's very annoying. I have to go back and reset it on the import settings. I wonder. Fix on the import settings. There we go, so now it's all black when it imports. Which should mean now I go to my prefab here. Yes, okay, now it's just a solid flat tile, which is what I want. Alright, cool. So, neat. Like that. Doing that the ref for going all the way over. Doesn't look quite right. Figure that out a bit later. Oh no, wait, that's lining up perfectly, right? It looked like it was. Alright then. And then I think I do want to delete this. Alright, I guess that's good after all. Need to figure out how we're going to be doing the floors on this part here. Technically, for a lot of in-between parts, I could just rotate these in, since it's all world aligned on it. Not like any overdraw at all. I just have some of these temporary lights in here right now. Eventually I'll actually be doing quite a bit more playing around with the lighting. Get it all right. I think this is the extent to about here, here, and over there. I'm going to be building this environment. I'm going to put the primary camera over here somewhere. And I think I want to enable ray tracing. I believe to enable ray tracing, I need to enable DirectX. I've messed with ray tracing quite a bit already. It's quite enjoyable to work with. The lighting looks really nice. Can't remember what setting I need to enable. Go back up. Pretty easy to turn on though. It's really like just a checkbox. Right. Go to project settings. May not be projects, is it? You go down to Windows and change the default RHI to DirectX 12. And now if we go to the rendering tab, we should be able to enable ray tracing. Wherever it is. There it is. There's a big ray tracing tab here. So I have to go turn on DirectX 12 first. Yes. Okay. Save all, and I'm gonna go to restart now. While it restarts, we can go back into Blender. Create the diagonal pieces for this. Ray tracing is fun to play around with. I like it. One thing you probably notice all the trailers for like the new games with ray tracing is a lot of it is like kind of really glossier, it seems. So in one of the Unreal Engine talks now, I think this later on Twitter, once I find it again, that Unreal Engine actually went over why a lot of the games look glossier with the ray tracing enabled. And that's because it's very expensive shader-wise for surfaces that transition between very rough and very wet. So like the edges of water puddles and whatnot, it's harder for the rays to calculate on those points. If something is very shiny, the ray just bounces off at the angle it hits, which is easier to calculate. That's why just for performance-wise, things are usually they're either on the shinier side or rougher side. I'm gonna have to use my brain for this. Not planning on doing. Oh no, wait. No, I don't. Figured it out. I need to duplicate this, then move that on Y to make sure these all match up just right. Select everything and make this the active vertex. I'm going to scale on the active element, do scale XX, and just scale it up till it gets really close. And then to make sure those are all in the right spot, I'm actually going to go keep it on active element. So rather than moving the origin, now that you can go into edit mode on two objects at once, I can actually this is going a bit too far. Go to like right there, so make it easier. This one, scale, shift Z 0. Now these UVs should tile perfectly. It doesn't matter as much for the wall pipes. I'm using world alignment. Could intersect, but if you weren't doing that, you'd need to do this. It's a good idea to do this anyways. It's all perfectly matched up. Right. I'm just going to call this diag. Do that for the other two. Insert its location there. Back down to 1, and then export that. Let's copy the name from in here. Probably need to do something similar with the railing here too soon. I also need to make the metal trim sheet I want, but I'm going to use like on the edges of these parts here and make the other trim sheet. So I think once I get a few more of these models done, I'll be starting on that. So I know that for my slip mat, what I want to do, let's go back and grab my ref. Maybe I don't need to do this. I want to though. So usually where the wetness accumulates on these is kind of in specific areas, kind of like on the corners here, and the cracks and crevices. What I'll probably be doing is inside the substance design when I create this is also create one extra map. It's like a wetness map. When I vertex blend on it, it'll make those areas a bit more wet than the others. Should look very nice. And get the wetness in all the right spots. See how that goes. Back to Unreal Engine, and we should have ray tracing on now. No, I don't want that. I don't think it's actually on right now because in order to really enable it, what we need to do, let's see, I need a bounding box. I'm first going to move all these to lighting. So to work with the ray tracing Unreal, you need a post-processing volume. And this is kind of where you control everything for ray tracing. A lot of the settings, at least. I'm gonna do it in just this section right here. Actually, I don't need to do this. So if you ever want a post-processing volume to affect the whole world, usually I put like all my post-processing stuff kind of in the same area, like all this. In your post-processing volume, you can go down to the very bottom, I think. And Infinite Extend Unbound. So if you toggle this on, this means the post-processing volume will now literally affect the entire world. I kind of only have one scene here. I don't care about it messing other parts of the world up, so I prefer to do that. And I'm going to move this into kind of lighting visuals base. Let's mess the ray tracing a little bit here. I may temporarily change these all to real-time lights, because baking the lighting will take a little bit of time. Not that much. Movable lighting can actually look a lot more higher quality anyway. Having some preview lights. Oh. Right? So here's all the ray tracing options here. And really, I don't recommend enabling all of them, because it does get very beefy on the computer. I do have an RTX 280 Ti. I have a pretty strong graphics card, but even with that, when I had like literally everything maxed out, I was getting like 20 FPS in the editor. So, like global illumination definitely isn't worth it. Automatically, that it should be using it already for the lighting some. I think there's some other options inside the lights here for the ray tracing. Yeah, so it already has enabled the ray trace shadow here. These shadows on these should be a bit nicer and more accurate. You can see like that, it's very crisp and sharp. Actually, that should be a bit smoother. I think I can adjust that too. Be around here somewhere. Get the mess of that later. But by default, the lighting is kind of already enabled for it. Just the reflections usually aren't. I can enable the reflections for a second. I'm going to turn them off. Wait to the end to re-enable them. Go find where that is. So ray trace reflections. That's actually not where we enable it, is it? For global illusion. I'm pretty sure this is one that really tanks the computer. Yeah, that's very laggy. I don't think that's actually true ray trace global illumination either. If we really want to test this real quick, what we can do, go into basics and grab a cube. I'm gonna make a new material. I'm gonna call it mirror. This could look cool for the metal parts. I'm really just gonna make this roughness 0 and make a constant 3 vector. Plug that in the color and just make this brighter. And probably make it metal. Make more sense. Oh, a chrome ball of sorts. Yeah, like that. Yeah, we can see the ray trace reflections are already working on this now, which is pretty cool. I really like it. Now the ray tracing reflections doesn't work when you have multiple bounces. You can increase it, but it just gets really laggy. As you can see, when I look at the same mirror in another bounce, the ray ends there, so it doesn't bounce a second time. So it does have its limits, but it's still really freaking cool. You can increase sampling, so it's a bit jittery when you move. I think there's some ways to improve that too. I haven't messed with it quite a lot on the super reflective stuff. It should be working on the ceiling some. Yeah, as long as you stare at it, the more it'll update. Definitely cool. Okay, so I'm gonna save that. Let me think for how I'm going to want to do this. Before I actually do it in system, I'm going to go ahead and make the actual texture. Already got all this here, so I'm going to move all this too. And make these double-sided. Neat. Alright. Go back to Blender and look at what we have. We need the anti-slip matte piece and all that. Where do I have my texture? That's over here. As with my first modeling video, I kind of already mapped these out and UV'd them. I just need to make the textures on them. And this upper part here is blank, so there's not anything on that yet. I'm not sure what I may add some drains or something to it. Or actually probably some decals of some sort. Add that a little bit later too. So I'm going to add a camera here real quick. Do it directly on top. And if I make this orthographic, I can change my resolution to something square. It can be anything square, so I'm going to do 100 by 100. Or I guess 1024 would be more the correct one to use. Tell the camera to be 2 by 2. Means that orthographic scale to 2. And then I go into it. I'm looking straight down at it now. So now I can go to my sample settings. I'm going to change the render all the way down to 1 just so it renders it instantly. And can I be doing passes inside of Eevee? How's this going to render? Just one that says reference, really, to put into the Substance Designer. See what it does. Ah, it's beautiful. That's what I want. I don't think I can do OpenGL render, just like start render the viewport either inside of Eevee, can I? No, I can't. Let's go to cycles. And oh, I can't do an OpenGL render anymore. Inside of this, that's kind of annoying. So instead, I'm just going to take this all the way down to 1 and adjust my render passes. I want to do this. So let's actually, for this to make more sense, this for the render. Let's actually duplicate this and move on Y. Let's separate this one a little bit. Beautiful. Not really. Might need to make that a bit thicker. let's render this. It should render really quickly. And then I can go into my compositor. Yeah, I can't see that at all. Move that over. Bigger. See if that helps it. Oh, I know what the issue is. Right, there it goes. That was fine before, actually. Not want to do that. There we have that. This is a little reference image I can use now. Now I can get started making the trim parts that are going to go here, and will also be like on the anti-slipping here. Then next we'll be modeling several pipes, plaster material on that. It looks like couldn't plaster. I think I'm going to add in a few extra metal parts because we got more than one ref inside lots of different kind of things going on. I'll probably still make the beveled versions of these, though it's not that awful right now. I also think I may want to make some chipped ones, how that looks. And then this will all really come together once you start adding in lightings. We're still somewhat in a block out phase on it. This bothers me. Be gone. Reminds me, I also need to add more vertices to these for painting on. Right? Go ahead and add these over here. You probably want to turn these sections in the hallway prefabs too. Isn't that much of a hassle to do? So I've done it. Also going to make a corner version for these pieces here. Those. It is starting to come together. want to, I can add in a camera now. Right click and then click pilot camera. I want to change the lens on this too. I'll start positioning this as I build and then reference as I do things. Have it through here. I'm going to change the focal length on, let's say, 25mm. Something like that. Okay, let's move on to the SD process for the trim sheets here. My nodes. There they are. So for my reference image, what you can do is down here in the bottom right. You can click on background image here in the 2D viewport in SD. And navigate to what you want. Go to my flooded subway, textures, subway trim sheet, ref, hit open. It puts it down in the 2D viewport in the background, and up here you can slide it back and forth to adjust how strong it is. Pretty convenient. So now I can use this to figure out what I want to do. Pull back up my reference. Alright. I'll make this anti-slip mat, which has a few notches going across. I think just 2 there. Tactile bumping there, the draining, and the little rubber slits are at the base there, or the rubber padding. So let's block out the main shapes there. There we go. Do these a bit more custom. Yeah, you can't go above 1 on those. Also another way I've done this before, but this works for now. Yes, for the black and white texture inside of Unreal Engine, what I do whenever something is not needed, you can just put in a single constant. So not a constant 3 vector, but like for this mirror material here, I just have the raw constant numbers plugged in, say roughness and metallic. So I don't need to actually have a texture file that's taking up space for it. You can just do that right in here. Though sometimes when you have materials that are instanced and they say have a slot where they like require a texture, like this one here, for example, says it needs these, and I think he has a way to disable them. Or these may want a metallic texture, but if you don't have one, you may just have to use a very low res solid color. What I've done for other material instances before. So I think you may have put in controls for that kind of stuff, so you don't need it. So the answer to that question is yes, but I just use a single constant rather than a constant 3 vector. The way I'm going to mask these is like this. Knit mapping to manual. Oh, that's better. It may not be the best noise to see. Can't I plug this in? That. Interesting. Plug into the base color here. Neat. Didn't add it back. Maybe this is a bug in 2018. Thought I had it plugged in there just a second ago. Alright, now it's plugging in. We're gonna want to use some sort of crystal texture instead of this. Might be fine. Well, the majority of what we do is mostly procedural. Matt's the real procedural master at GT, and I kind of do a lot more hybrid kind of workflows, or I usually create bitmaps or other data to feed to him. I've definitely seen, you know, if you go on to ArtStation, look like at job applications for all the studios, they'll request a procedural texture artist, is how some of them say it, or a substance wizard, what I've seen some of them post as. So it definitely is a job for doing a lot of it procedural. So SD is something I think you definitely want to know to be a texture artist now. But they also expect you to have really good sculpting skills and modeling skills and so forth. Like for all the textures I've done, I also use Marvel's Designer to make the textures, because Marvel's Designer can just do things that Substance Designer can't do. And there are some things that are just going to be flat out way easier to model and sculpt and then import into Substance Designer. It's not always practical to do everything 100% inside just Substance Designer. And I want to do different things. I think it's still a good idea to be pretty well rounded. Still know how to do a lot of hard surface modeling. I've done hard surface modeling for some sci-fi materials, like wiring and cables, and I do sculpting for some of them sometimes. Awesome material I did a long time ago that I remember I had to do quite a bit of rigging for. So having some rigging knowledge can help too. That's a bit more rare. But if you need to say make like a corpse pile of dead bodies and humans and make that a texture, you'd probably want to have human bodies and rig those and pose those with IK constraints in order to make a tile. That's how I had done a corpse pile material a long time ago when I was practicing. Is this normal combine? That's I'm gonna do this material blend. I've usually done this by having like material blend per section. It's very chunky. I don't like that. I'm gonna use the crystal and scale it, which would be better for this. Plugin base color. Alright, cool. Glad that helped. I don't think I'm gonna have any metallicness on this. I might though. Get that later. I want to put this on like a mid-level thing. The shiny for now, I know I'm gonna want this to have wet. Let's see what it's gonna look like once it's wet. As for the height, do this coming out of the center like this. Bruh. Yeah, it's not quite what I want. Maybe. Like a crystalline structure will give me more than I want for the normal. Yeah, like that a little bit more. Not really too noticeable though. I'll be layering more stuff all on top of this later. Why? Once I finish up this last slip here, I'll probably be done streaming for today. But then I'll be continuing next Wednesday when I stream again, getting these all plugged into the sets and then getting those into Unreal Engine on these. So these trims will be going all along here, here, and so forth. And I'll have some more going out through the scene. Let's start to bring more things together. And next will be just the ads from the box and start on quite a bit of the cabling and wiring on there too, and also the metal trim sheet. Then after that, most of the text will be done, the rest will just be modeling, plugging things in, and then doing all the lighting. We're not too far away from the end. So I have quite a bit more to do though, to get it all look finalized. So odds are for the remaining space on our trim sheet, we'll probably do a few drains here and there. I want to go ahead and start getting these into the environment and seeing how they look scaled and everything. Doing that next stream. And from there, I'll be able to kind of decide as the environment moves along on what I need left to go into this trim sheet. I scale these down a little bit more too to make them smaller. Big. I'll be adding some more color variation to this too right here. Directional noise a little bit probably. I'll be adding probably an overall grunge layer on top of the entire system afterwards too. I think what we have here is good so far. Probably go ahead and export this. Since the UVs are already done, it might go ahead and line up really well. We will see. I'm actually going to do that before I end off the stream. I already have everything plugged in. Need to plug in the roughness. And ambient occlusion. And metalness. Nothing. Let's go ahead and export these out and plug them in already. They're probably not going to match it quite right. If not, we'll be able to fix it next time. That's good for now. I'll also be fine-tuning the colors on these a bit more. Subway trim sheet. Let's export this. Right. Now I'm back into Unreal. Go ahead and drop in the textures now. Go to my subway trim sheet, grab everything. Not everything. Now this is everything. Drag these up. I'm just going to quickly assign it to the basic instance. What about these textures from it? We have to add in our own, whatchamacallit, our own opacity later on. That'll be easy. AO. Height. Normal. We don't want all of that. So don't use pawn. All right. Let's see where this pairs. And of course I have the text about it from before. I'm trying to map things out. So I don't use the Substance plugin because I specifically want my maps to be more compacted down. So I want to make sure they're all 8-bit and also put into an MRAL texture. Back when I did use the Substance plugin, it always had to do it very separate, so I couldn't have very much customization in my textures. And all the substances just didn't always work inside the Substance plugin side things at the time. It may be a bit better now, but I'd still be able to have things a bit more specified. Plus I can plug these into the shade setup here that looks a lot better. You basically just don't have quite as much control as it may seem when you're using the Substance plugin. Let's update this. Green tile. Now I can grab my PT basic instance into this, and hey, look, it already matches up. That's pretty cool. Of course, I put the yellow text on there, but other than that, it's already plugged in. I'll probably want to adjust how strong this grunge is on the edge and all that. No, other than that, it is working. Yeah, I definitely want to adjust how strong that grunge is on. It's too much right now. Seems like everything else is relatively working. I want to adjust this a little bit more how I want it. Also get the opacity because I think I'm going to actually have the drain below it so you can actually see through it, which would be cool. These rubber slippings here will go on the bases of all the walls, which is cool. But now that I've got kind of the base setup of that, it'll be easier to model and texture the other parts, like the parts that turn here and so forth. I think I just about have all the texture I need besides the drains on that, and then I'll be making a metal trim sheet, which will be for doing all the metal details on here. So I also have a little screw decal parts on it, and that'll also be used for doing the metal parts here. Oh, right, these steps should be able to have the slippings on it now. So go and plug that in too. These all only have one slot right now. I'm supposed to. Yeah, those are going to be a bit weird on the edge there. Ignore that though. Let's just pretend they don't look like that. I want to reverse these, and I also want to make these a lot smaller. Now that I've got them in engine, I can see just where I need to make adjustments and whatnot. Now I need to adjust these quite a bit more to get the look how I want it to look. More towards the end, we'll start adding the flooded water here. Some special stuff I want to try with that. Look really nice. Yeah, I think that's all we're doing now for the day. We got corner situation figured out. We're mapping the UVs on that. We got all the materials plugged in the shade. And we got a big jump onto the trim sheet here. And we just need to adjust a little bit to make it more usable. So next stream I'll do a lot more of the modeling here and just about finish up all the modeling probably next stream. So all the piping and stuff will also be in place. And then the last stuff to do is really drop the materials on there and finalize the trim sheet, water, then lighting. We should be all done, I think. Seems like it. Move this over here first. Yeah, so I really don't need these to have them beveled. They look fine, I think. It all matches up perfectly. Alright. Thank you all for joining in on the stream. Matt will be streaming more on Friday, and he may do something more for this environment, another material or two. I can think of a few I might want. The only reason I'm doing the trim sheets and not maps is I have access to the 3D models here, so it's just a little bit easier for me to get my hands on them and adjust what I think I'll need in the environment. I might want like kind of a signing trim sheet, or actually some sort of like light material. Not sure yet. Maybe a different tile set that has like gum on the floor, though I think he may have already made that. I've missed it. We'll find out. Alright, I'll see you all next Wednesday, and Matt will be streaming again this Friday. Thank you all for coming.